Welcome back to the Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me is Omar Pozos, my co-host and husband. How are you doing, Omar?
I am. I got to pull up the feelingswheel.com, but I am excited. I'm happy. It's the weather is fantastic, and most importantly, we've got our whole team coming in for our in-team retreat. So I'm excited. How are you?
Yeah, I would echo that. We have we have 10 team members coming in today, and super excited to have everybody in person, getting to connect, and just like this is like one of the things I live for when you have a remote work environment, getting to put everybody in the same room and dive deep and just kind of work on some of the back end things together and do a lot of personal development, but also just have fun. Like it's the best. So kind of a little bit like a kid on Christmas morning. I'm like, oh, like Santa's coming.
You sound like our dog Zoe. She's like, oh, I'm so excited to see people.
She 100% thinks that everybody is coming to see her specifically.
They are.
Well, today I wanted to kind of talk on a topic that I've been sharing a little bit more on Instagram lately. And, I've been talking some about pieces of my journey more specifically because there's been a lot of aspects to my own health journey and healing journey of, talking about gut health, to sex hormones, thyroid, adrenals, talking about nervous system, talking about immune system. Like there's so many pieces and aspects to my journey that sometimes I like to zero in on one piece because sometimes it's really just even one piece that might be most relevant to certain people. Mm-hmm. And I think one that is extremely common and overlooked is the adrenals aspect. And that's because your adrenal gland plays a huge role in a lot of those other systems of the body. And I personally believe that the women of today are very much largely overstressed. Like I think our generations have gone through a lot of stress, and ultimately when you undergo a lot of stress, you're going to be putting on demand on your adrenal glands to produce cortisol amongst other hormones. And when your adrenals are just spending all this effort and energy towards producing a lot of cortisol, that high output of cortisol due to the physiological and mental stress throughout your life, then the adrenal glands can't always do their other jobs. And that's where then everything else in your body can start to take a hit, where we start to see sex hormones on the decline. We start to see, our liver and gut and all the different areas starting to just be in different places that we don't want them to be. And so for myself, while, it's kind of that like what came first, the chicken or the egg discussion, you never really know what was like that first domino piece that like caused everything else to get out of whack. I do think that stress and the output on my adrenals in, my early into mid 20s, I think that was a big aspect of the journey. And so ultimately, as many people know, if you know about my journey, when I really was at my worst, when I was in like peak, everything out of balance, when I pulled labs and I looked at my cortisol across the day with a 4-point cortisol test, what I essentially found is that my adrenals were in a state that, some people call adrenal fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Where, what does that mean? Describe that a little bit.
Yeah, basically like the easy way to understand it is just you're not producing enough cortisol. So your cortisol output was so high for so long that now you eventually get to a point where you can't really produce cortisol anymore. And that's where people typically feel extremely fatigued, feel just like really intense brain fog, have like really poor recovery. Like it can show up in different areas, but those are pretty common themes usually.
So if I'm understanding correctly, and for some of the listeners, because I think we've gotten a lot of newer listeners, but it sounds like, cortisol is so high that it almost flatlines to the point where now no cortisol is being produced. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's your whole HPA axis. So your hypothalamus there in your brain, your pituitary, your adrenals, it's all talking to each other. And so it's just, there's so much demand on the system there across the HPA axis that's where it's, we specifically talk about our adrenals here, but it's really kind of all three.
Yeah.
So that's where ultimately I, spent a lot of time working on a lot of pieces, but I do think that one of the pieces I'm most proud of is how I was able to get my adrenal fatigue back in a good place, like really how I reversed that like the issues that I was dealing with and got back to a good place. And so that's why I wanted to like spend some time on the podcast talking specifically what were like the 4 key things that I think made that happen.
Can I ask, and I know we're diving into like the 4 key things that, you did, before we jump into all of that, for somebody that is listening that maybe hasn't heard your story, and if they haven't, I know we recorded a full episode on your story, like the symptoms and everything, episode 82 and 83. But can you give like a quick, like 10-second just overview on some of the other symptoms that you were experiencing, so that somebody, because a lot of times I think low energy, people are like, well, I'm not sleeping very well because of my kids, or well, I've never been a good sleeper or anything like that. But in addition to the brain fog, the fatigue, what other symptoms can people be on the lookout for when it comes to adrenal fatigue?
Yeah, I mean, it could be so many different things because, again, it's going to impact different aspects of your body. So it's like we could get into a long list here, but that's where I think the biggest ones would be energy related. So that could look like in the morning, maybe you even on days that you sleep in or you do your best to get as much sleep as possible, you still just feel exhausted. Like it just seems like no matter how much you sleep, doesn't matter, doesn't make a difference. You're probably that person where it's like you just drag through the day. It's like you wake up and you're just like, oh my God, I just wish I could go back to sleep now. All day long you're dragging. Maybe you're just like relying on caffeine, just like you basically need an IV drip of caffeine, but then you probably later in the day.
Do you want to share how much caffeine you were drinking at one point, babe?
Oh my gosh. I mean, at certain points I was just like, I basically was an IV drip of caffeine. I remember like one time at an event creating a pot of coffee, and I drank the whole pot of coffee across the day. And I was like, I don't even want this anymore. I just need to try and keep my eyes open.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, no, it could show up in so many different ways. And it's, the severity of it, of course, is going to like be part of that discussion. But like, I think the energy and the mental piece of it, of like, you're going to feel really brain foggy. It's hard sometimes to even hold conversations because you're like, I feel like I can't even follow what you're saying right now. And it's like, it's tough. Yeah. So if you want to hear a little bit more of like what it was like as I was going through it, I think, you mentioned their episode, I think it was 82 and 83.
Yep.
That's why we recorded that like as I was really actively kind of working through it.
I think there may have been some tears there too. So if you want to hear Vanessa cry, go listen.
I've cried on a lot of podcast episodes, let's be clear. But today I wanted to now, here I am like, about 2 years later, able to look back on it and really pinpoint what were the things that I think made the biggest difference. And I want to pull those out so that, if nothing else, if you're completely overwhelmed, you're like, I don't know where to start. I think these are truly the 4 things that are going to help you start feeling better the fastest. So number 1 is backing off of training. And so that was a big theme actually from that episode. Now thinking back on it, was I was really talking about like, I stopped working out. Like I had to completely cut out intentional exercise. And a lot of people get like so up in arms over this when I talk about it, because
you got some crap on Instagram for
I
this,
know,
didn't you?
like, and the reality is I'm not saying this from a place of encouraging people to just never work out again or stop working out completely, or just use this as an excuse to, if you're someone who has trouble keeping up with an exercise routine, be like, oh, well, here, I just don't even need to try anymore. That's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking to the people who are, have always been exercising, have been in good routines with it, but are having a really hard time with it. If you're in a place where your body's not recovering well, you're probably gaining weight over time, you're feeling really run down, like it might be a sign that maybe we actually need to pull back. And it doesn't have to mean completely stopping like I did for that period of time. For a lot of women, again, it depends on like the severity of what we're dealing with when it comes to our cortisol and our adrenals. But for, a case that's more adrenal fatigue, I will typically say, let's do 1 strength training workout and maybe, 1 to 2 yoga or, light Pilates workouts for per week. So, even if we want to maintain our routines and our habits of exercise, we're going to change what it looks like a little bit. But that's even on like the higher end. For some people, we might pull back completely for a period of time. And for myself, I purely did just like really basic, easy yoga for a good at least 3-4 months. That was all I did. And it was like, I would say about a 6-month period before I really started to bring back in intentional, strength training and things like that. So my general recommendation for someone out there who's resonating with this and feeling like, man, that might be what I'm dealing with right now, try even just for 4 to 8 weeks, try pulling back from how much training you're doing. And again, I'm not speaking to the people who are not training at all anyway. I'm speaking to the people who have been regular with their exercise routines, You don't have to be someone who's like killing yourself in the gym, but if you're someone who's been actively strength training or actively doing, high intensity workout, cardio, I really, really encourage you, pull back on the intensity, because every time we do something more intense like that, in the gym, or just like, exhausting our body with like cardio, things like that, you are putting demand on the adrenal gland, and your adrenals are not able to function the way that they were before. So your adrenals just can't keep up, and you're never really letting them catch up and fully rest.
Yeah.
So we need to be in a super restful state as much as possible.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and you probably explained this a lot better than I can, Ness. But when you're already tired, you're already brain foggy, you're already holding on to inflammation and all that stuff. It's my understanding that obviously if you're adding more stress to your body, good type of stress from training, but it's still stress nonetheless, and it just compiles to the point where like it's like a bucket where it just overflows, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I would
See,
encourage
I pay
you.
attention around here.
Yeah, when it comes to activity, like I'm talking about pulling back from training, but it doesn't mean that you can't still go for walks. Like I really encourage just gentle walking, like especially after meals, because your blood sugar regulation is probably not in a good place either if you're in this position. So even like if you just want to pair like a gentle, easy walk after each meal, that would be fantastic. If you can maybe go for like a little bit of a longer walk on, especially if you are still maintaining exercise, where maybe you're doing that one light, easy strength training workout, and then maybe 2 yoga or Pilates classes per week. On the days that you're not doing those things, maybe go for a longer walk on those days. And I really encourage you, like, if you can't, try to get outside, especially this time of year. We're in the springtime right now. Most places are, warming up. You're probably starting to see some better weather. Try and get out, get some sunshine, get some vitamin D, take some space, breathe in some fresh air. Like, do not look past the healing benefits of just getting outside and just gently moving your body with no intention of exercise, but just moving to move. So that would be the first one there, is really think about backing off your training and be more intentional with like more restful styles of exercise. Number 2 is nourishing the adrenals. So we got to talk about your nourishment here, your nutrition. And when it comes to our adrenal glands, when they are recovering, when they're in this place where they're exhausted, we definitely are going to need more food than not. So if you're someone who you don't even know how much you're eating right now, I would encourage you, try to figure out how much you are eating. Maybe track for a period of time. Maybe try and, you can go to calculators online to get like a general estimate of how much you should be eating to maintain your weight. Like that's pretty easy to figure out online. And then what you can do, try and work your way up to where it says that you should be about that much. Because even if you are overestimating a little bit, if you're actually eating a little bit, if you end up going a little bit more than like what your body's actually maintaining on, that's okay. Like your body needs the nourishment right now if you want to get recovered, so that you can then lose the weight later. So it's okay to put like our body composition goals on the back burner for a little bit in order to get where we need and want to be. Might be part of the process for you. And if you really continue to resist that because you're like, I'm afraid of gaining weight, I'm afraid, or like, I'm so uncomfortable in my body right now, I just have to lose weight, you're gonna keep digging yourself in a deeper hole if we're not giving your body the nourishment it needs. So that's a huge aspect, is just purely eating enough.
And I know you've also talked about the pyramid of health, right? Where it's like on one end you have aesthetics, you have performance, and then you have obviously overall health. And to your point, sometimes we go drastically on one side where it's like, mainly based on aesthetics. And sometimes we have to dial it back a little bit and focus more on being more health conscious, like you were saying, nourishing your body, giving it the help and support you need. And then we can always, go and lean into the other side. But you can't do that from a place of, not scarcity, but a place of
fear.
Yeah, there you go. Fear.
Yeah.
That's a great word.
Yeah. Can you look up what is the episode that was the triangle of health?
I'll look it up while you.
Because that's a really great reminder. If you're in this journey, like, that first step there of pulling back from training, like that's a reminder that, hey, performance might not be the goal right now. Maybe you've always been really strong. You've always been really fast. You've always been really fit. And that's okay. You will return to that place, but we can't continue to try and hold on to that part of our identity if your body needs to recover right now.
It's episode 141.
Yeah, that's a really good one to go back and listen to. Now, back to number 2 here, nourishing our adrenals. We talked about eating enough. Like your adrenals need the energy. Food is energy. Calories are energy. But of course, when we talk about just eating more in general, I want to encourage you, like, thinking about what you're eating as well. In general, eating more nutrient-dense whole foods, like we all know that, right? But let's really try and think about if maybe 80 to, even if we can get up to like 90% of our calories are coming from that nutrient-dense whole foods, that is going to speed up your healing journey faster than if you're getting a lot of those calories from foods that are not as nutrient dense, not as, whole and natural. They're more processed, things like that. It doesn't mean you have to be afraid of those foods or you feel like you have to cut them out, but it's just something to be aware of, that like the quality of the food does matter as well. Yeah. Specifically when it comes to our adrenals, I really encourage you to incorporate really magnesium rich foods in your diet. So that could look like fatty fish, getting some good salmon and tuna. Maybe start to incorporate that into your meal planning a couple days a week if you can. Even if you're someone who's like, I don't love fish, if you, something that I find a lot of people can like find themselves liking a little bit more is creating kind of like a tuna salad. And you can even do like a salmon salad, get like quality, like the fresh catch kind of brand.
The wild catch.
Yeah, like the wild caught. You know what I'm talking about?
No, not really.
We literally buy it every week, but it's
the wild caught is it's kind of what we go for, but I don't know what the brand is.
Yeah. No, it's the canned tuna and salmon and stuff like that's a really good one to have in hand. And you could just mix it with some avocado right there. You're pairing two really awesome magnesium rich foods. And then you can, maybe have it with like some, salty, like maybe like a good even seed based chip. That right there.
The Simple Mills brands are really good. I like those.
Yeah,
those
but like
a lot.
that combination right there, you're giving your body really, really great nourishment and what it needs, because and you're also probably hitting a craving of like, you're probably going to crave salt a little bit more right now when your adrenals are taxed out. So like that can be a great combination right there, is making a little, tuna or salmon salad. Just have that 1 or 2 days a week.
You can literally do it in like 5 minutes. Like that stuff is so easy. Just throw
especially for
in a bowl.
someone busy. That's perfect. Adding in more legumes, like really getting in some, some chickpeas, some beans, green beans, like things like that can be really great. Just some good leafy greens, some good, dark greens, like that stuff. If we can just focus on just trying to incorporate a little bit more of that in, especially if it's not something you currently eat much of, adding even just a little bit more in will make a difference for sure. And then when it comes to nourishing the adrenals, we also got to think about the hydration side of that. So Electrolytes are going to be huge when it comes to adrenal fatigue, because your adrenals rely a lot on minerals. And minerals, I always like to say minerals are like the spark plug in the body. If we're not getting enough,
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, if we're not getting enough, like your body's going to start falling apart real fast, and adrenals is a big part of that. So a common symptom too when our adrenals are taxed is we typically have a lot of salt cravings, and a lot of that comes from your body has just been burning through your mineral stores. So rather than being like, oh, I'm going to go, get the like low quality Chinese food because that's what I'm craving because I'm craving salt, and not to say that's bad, not to say that you can't ever have that, but maybe instead be like
some Chinese food is pretty bad.
But it's like, we there's, no shame, and like you could have these things in moderation, but rather than being like, oh, I'm having this craving, let me, just have the exact thing I'm craving, maybe question, why is my body specifically craving that? Is it that my, mineral stores aren't where they need to be, and I actually need to make sure I'm adding a little bit more electrolytes into my diet? So that could look like using a quality salt and make sure you're putting that on your meal a little bit more. I, personally, with a lot of clients, especially with adrenal fatigue clients, and especially during my journey, will add an actual electrolyte supplement. We've used Element quite a bit. There's been like recent controversy around the quality of their ingredients possibly not being as quality as they say it is. We're personally in our household still using Element because I like it.
We also used the Redmond's
that
brand.
one's a good one. Yeah. The Redmond's Relight.
And then you can always just literally grab like Himalayan salt and sprinkle that into your water.
Yeah. No, and there are lots of good brands out there. I just want to be very clear and honest too, of like,
not associated
we use Element, but like it might not be the number one best option. But it's one of those things where you gotta, I believe you can't be perfect in every way. And if you're trying to like chase perfection in everything, it can get pretty exhausting really fast. So that's just an example, for myself during that time period. I was even having multiple electrolyte packets across the day sometimes, not encouraging everybody to do that. Especially, maybe talk to your doctor if you've dealt with high blood pressure, things like that. Maybe, consider what would be best for you. I always encourage working with a professional when it comes to supplements. And then speaking of supplements on that point too, when it comes to nourishing your adrenals, oftentimes, if we're really in a severe adrenal fatigue case, we're gonna need supplements, because ultimately you might need glandular supplements as well, which is quite literally like taking actually pieces of a healthy gland in a supplement form, along with other really important herbs and minerals and different things. And that is incredibly healing for the gland as well. But I have to make sure I make this very clear. And there's a lot of reasons why I don't talk about supplements very often on the podcast, and why I want to share this one, because I do want to be honest about what I think were the things that made the biggest difference in my adrenal fatigue. And part of the Nourishing the Adrenals was using proper supplementation. And that did include, glandular supplements for a period of time. It's super, super important that if you are considering using supplements for your adrenals, you don't guess where your adrenals are at. You are testing. Test, don't guess. Like, super important, because if you mistakenly read your symptoms and it's actually something else going on, but you supplement thinking that you're supplementing for, adrenal fatigue, and you're not, you could actually end up making things worse because you're giving your body the wrong things. So want to be very, very clear about that. Very much encourage getting labs done and working with a professional who understands your labs and understands supplementation and can help you figure that out. Number 3, and this is a big one, and that is cutting back on caffeine. So it's the one people don't want to hear, but that was a huge one for me. Like we talked about earlier, I was very much addicted to caffeine. I was drinking way too much of it. And so I personally did a full caffeine detox. I completely cut it out. It was painful for a period of time. I'm going to be honest about that. But I think that was hugely beneficial. I did, kind of initially fully cut it out, but I also kind of replaced it with a mushroom coffee. So I used mud water, and that was a huge difference for me. And then when I was like,
Mud water is the brand, by the way.
Yeah.
People are like, wait, she did what?
Mud water was the one that I used. There's other types of mushroom coffees. You might find one that you like, but that was a really good just way for me to like not cut it out cold turkey, but just replace it with something else and kind of get that feeling a little bit. And then if I was at a coffee shop, I would get matchas. That's going to be a better option than caffeine because of like the other natural ingredients in the green tea. But, ongoing, even from there. So like for those who are like, I can't fully cut it out, even just cutting back. So like since restoring my adrenal fatigue, I still limit myself to 1 cup of coffee a day. If I need something secondary to that, I'll have a mushroom coffee. And then the last one I want to hit on, the 4th thing that on the key changes I made, the most just biggest difference makers for me with my adrenal fatigue, is getting my circadian rhythm really balanced out. Now, we have to be on a really good sleep schedule if we want to heal our adrenal glands. Like, sleep is going to be the most healing thing you can do. And like you always would joke of like, as long as I just get a really good sleep in, like I'm going to be a little bit better. If I'm feeling like a little bit sick, I just need a little bit more sleep.
Oh, joke that you would do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I thought I was like, oh, I don't know if I ever said that. But yes.
No,
yes.
you would say that. You'd be like,
I'm like,
just
you need to
maybe
go to
just
sleep.
get some more sleep. For myself, I would try really hard just to get an extra hour of sleep, and I would try to get that on the front end of let me go to bed earlier, because like sleeping in later, it's realistically not always possible for a lot of people, and it wasn't always possible for me as well running a business. But if I had the option, I would also sleep in, because the more sleep you can get, the faster you're going to heal. Like you're going to need more sleep than the average person during this period of time. So with that, do everything you can. Optimize your bedtime routine. Look at, how can you help your body have better quality sleep? Can we limit screen time before bed? If we need to be on screens, can we use blue light blocking glasses? There's a lot we can do there to really support your body.
Or even something as simple that I'm so bad with, but just leaving the phone outside the bedroom so that I don't have that urge to like doom scroll on TikTok or Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe even just like replace rather than trying to cut out a habit, see if you can replace it with something else. Can you get a book and read something that's restorative for you too? Like feed your brain during this time. But that's more on like the nighttime side of it. In the mornings, part of getting your circadian rhythm in a good spot is try and get some sunlight in the morning. Do the best you can. I know it's not possible for everyone every day, but if you can, even just 5-10 minutes is going to make a huge difference. Getting that sun in your eyes helps your body understand what time it is. It helps set your circadian rhythm, which is what's guiding your cortisol output in your adrenals. Your adrenals put cortisol out at different amounts at different times of day based on the time of day. How does your body read what time of day it is? A big part of that is light. So natural light, important, and then cutting out unnatural light, important. So those are the 4 biggest things: backing off from training, nourishing my adrenals, cutting back on caffeine, rebalancing my circadian rhythm. If you do nothing else, I promise you, focusing on those 4 things in whatever way feels realistic and manageable for you right now, you will start to feel better over time. And if you start to feel better, you're going to start to look better. Like everything's going to fall in place. It just takes time and intentional effort. And I want to say too, like, as I wrap this up, I've been getting a lot of questions as I've shared more and more about my journey of people being like, God, I resonate with this about, this. And like, I feel like you're talking to me here and I feel like I need your help. And part of why we put out so much free content, so many free resources, like the podcast, the resources I give away on Instagram, like all the things, is because I want to help as many people as possible. But in order to help women on the level I want to help within our coaching, within our service that we offer at Vital Spark, I can't help everybody. Like, unfortunately, I don't want to grow to be this huge corporation company. I don't want to just lose the quality of our service and the high touch, what we do here. And so for those women who are thinking like, this is what I need your help, I need direction here, I feel lost, like, I hear you, I see you, and I want you to know, like, we're here to help you. But the thing is, our one-on-one coaching, it is extremely high touch. Like, we only take on a little bit of clients at any point in time. This is why, those who follow me on Instagram, I often talk about that we do have a wait list for our coaching. It's typically 3 to 4 months to get started with us. And that is intentional. We have to be selective. We have to make sure we don't take on more women that we can handle at any given time, so that we can provide the service that I want to be providing, so that we can customize everything to what you need it to be, so we can do the labs, the hormone and gut protocols, the just really intentionality behind everything. I was talking to a client just yesterday who was sharing how she has connected with some of the other clients in our community, and they were trading protocols of like, look what I'm doing. And they realized how all of them at one point had a flush. Every single one of their flush protocols looked entirely different foods, different supplements, different recommendations. That's because nothing that we do is cookie cutter. There's so much intentionality that goes into it. Now, I just want to give all that background so you guys understand that when I say like, we have a wait list, and when I'm, talking with you and saying like, we're going to get a call scheduled, but it might not be, immediately today, tomorrow. I just want you to understand it is not because I don't care about you. It is because I care. It is because I want to get you the quality of support that you deserve. And in order to do that for all the women who want our help, we have to stick to these standards. So if it is something that you're interested in, if it's something you've been kind of eyeing and be like, well, maybe it's something I'll start, maybe next month. I want you to be aware that we do have that wait list. So go ahead and reach out now. You can fill out the applications in the show notes. We review your applications personally, me and my team together, and we'll reach out there and get a call booked for you as soon as we can. So that is the best way to kind of learn a little bit more about coaching. And really, at the end of the day, it's not about just looking good and losing weight and having those kinds of like external transformations. It's about the internal stuff we're talking about here. I want you to feel better. You should not feel fatigued. You should not feel stuck with brain fog. Like, you should not feel like you have to deal with this on your own. We are here to help you with that. So anyway, that's my rant for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you all. We'll be back next week with another great episode.
Bye, everybody.